lost my mind.
IP horror has really become its own thing lately. A lot of people express fatigue with it, understandably so, but the trend doesn't show signs of fading. Classic stories, especially those tied to Disney, keep getting pulled into the horror space. Now it's Cinderella's turn, though the Ugly Stepsister doesn't go where most people might expect. This one comes out of Norway and premiered at the Sundance and Berlin Film Festival, and it leans into this hard 1970s vibe with soft focus, warm film grain, and that whimsical music that somehow makes the story feel even more surreal. And it's got that dreamy texture, but underneath, there's a lot of sadness. It digs into things like beauty standards and that quiet kind of emptiness that people carry when they're constantly being told who they should be. The focus shifts away from Cinderella and onto the two older stepsisters, mainly Elvira, but the film actually repositions the younger sister so that the age-wise she no longer fits the romantic mold for the prince. And that choice alone says a lot. The story doesn't echo Disney, it leans closer to the original Grimm fairy tale, and there's this real respect for that darker source material. And Elvira becomes the centerpiece, and through her, the film explores the tension between identity and expectation, and her family's financial strain creates pressure that builds and twists her. Scenes dealing with her physical transformation are subtle but tough to sit through. Less about gore, but more about discomfort, and edges into body horror, but not in the traditional monster movie way. This one's more about what people do to themselves to feel worthy. And that's where the emotional weight really lands. It's not loud, it's not sensational, but it's heavy. And the story doesn't rush. It doesn't cater to everyone. It's in Norwegian, it's emotionally dense, and it doesn't give you a clean, satisfying arc. What it does offer is a character-driven reflection on self-worth, sacrifice, and the kind of pain that doesn't scream, but simmers. The younger stepsister ends up being the voice of reason. Cinderella, more complicated than usual, and the prince, far from charming, but everyone's flawed, and Elvira's obsession becomes a kind of emotional gravity, pulling everything and everyone down with her. Her environment doesn't push back. Instead, it quietly feeds the spiral. And for those into unconventional horror or experimental storytelling, this one stands out. It's not going to be for everyone, but within that smaller audience, it could leave a real mark. Definitely more of a slow burn psychological piece than a crowd pleaser. And what's interesting is how clearly it speaks now, especially with its theme of body image and pressure. Elvira starts to relatable and likable, and what happens to her feels tragically inevitable. And it reminded me of The Substance, but more rooted in fantasy and fairy tale. In the end, I came away with mixed feelings. The visuals were in that retro way, the story not easy but deeply thoughtful, and the emotion sad mostly, but real. And if you have thoughts on the 70s vintage look, the return to darker folklore, or the future of IP horror in general, this is the kind of film that gets the conversation going. Maybe we don't need more of these reimaginings, but when they're done with this much care and perspective, they earn their place. Thanks for going on this film journey with me, and as always, be real.